Lena Alvarez was used to blending into the background, quietly moving through life in her scrubs and sneakers, always tired yet always smiling for the sake of her patients. Nursing had never been about the paycheck for her, it was about the calling, about being the steady hand for frightened children and the warm voice for families who sat awake all night in sterile hospital rooms. But beneath that quiet strength, Lena carried her own silent struggles. The bills stacked higher each month, her tiny apartment leaked every time it rained, and the second-hand clothes she wore reminded her of sacrifices she never complained about. When the annual hospital charity gala was announced, a flutter of hope rose in her chest. Everyone talked about it as if it were the one night a year when the nurses, doctors, and staff could forget the heaviness of their jobs and simply feel like people again. For Lena, the idea of putting on a beautiful dress and stepping into that glittering ballroom felt like stepping into a dream she had never known. Yet reality hit hard, her bank account showed numbers that couldn't even stretch to groceries, let alone a gown. She tried laughing it off when her fellow nurses teased her about who she might dance with under the golden chandeliers. But behind her smile, her heart ached at the thought of standing outside while everyone else sparkled inside. It was easier to pretend she didn't care than to admit how much she longed, just once, to be seen not only as a nurse in worn-out shoes, but as a woman deserving of a moment of grace. That night, after her shift ended, Lena lingered in the children's ward longer than usual, straightening the blankets of her smallest patients, whispering lullabies, and making sure every stuffed animal was tucked in at just the right angle. It was her way of giving them the love she wished someone had once given her. Among those tiny faces was Emma, a bright-eyed little girl fighting through weeks of treatment with more courage than most adults could muster. Emma's father, Daniel Hart, rarely left her side. A widower in his early 40s, Daniel had a quiet intensity about him, the kind of presence that filled the room even when he said nothing. He often watched Lena with a mixture of gratitude and curiosity, noticing the way she spoke to his daughter as though every word was dipped in light. He had seen many nurses come and go, but something about Lena's gentleness lingered. That evening, as Lena adjusted Emma's foreline, Daniel asked if she planned to attend the upcoming gala. She froze for a moment, caught off guard, before offering a half-smile and a quick shake of her head. "Not really my kind of thing," she whispered, though the ache in her voice betrayed her. Daniel didn't press, but his eyes studied her with quiet thoughtfulness. For the first time since his wife's passing, he felt something stir, a desire not just to thank someone, but to reach out in a way that mattered. And though Lena didn't know it, that single unfinished conversation was about to become the turning point in both of their lives, sparking a question that neither of them could have imagined. The following morning, Lena arrived at the hospital to find Emma's room unusually bright, sunlight streaming through the window as Daniel stood by the bedside with 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Lena without a word, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. She hesitated but accepted, the warmth of the cup sinking into her tired hands. "I've been thinking," Daniel began softly, careful not to wake Emma who had finally drifted into peaceful sleep. "You spend so much of your time giving, yet I wonder, when was the last time someone gave back to you?" The question caught her off guard. She laughed nervously, brushing a strand of hair from her face, unsure how to answer. "I don't really need much," she said. "I'm fine." But Daniel wasn't convinced. He studied the weariness in her eyes, the way her smile tried to hide longing. Then, almost as if he'd rehearsed the words all night, he asked, "Would you consider being my first date since everything?" His voice broke slightly, the weight of his past pressing into his present. Lena froze, her heart thundering. No one had asked her something so personal in years. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then whispered, "Daniel, I can't. I don't even have a dress for the gala." The confession slipped out before she could stop it, raw and vulnerable. For a long moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the hum of medical machines. Daniel didn't smile or pity her, instead, his eyes softened with something rare and genuine. "Then let me fix that," he said quietly, his tone carrying the certainty of a man who finally saw her, not just as a nurse, but as a woman worth choosing. Lena's instinct was to protest, to retreat back into the safe walls she had built around her life. "Daniel, I can't accept something like that," she whispered, shaking her head. "I don't want anyone thinking I'm taking advantage," but before she could finish, Daniel gently interrupted. "This isn't about pity, Lena. It's about gratitude, and maybe a little hope. You've given my daughter joy when she was in pain. You've reminded me that life can still hold kindness. Please, let me do this for you." His words disarmed her defenses, reaching past her pride into a part of her that had long been starved of tenderness. Later that evening, Lena returned home to her tiny apartment, staring at her reflection in the cracked mirror above the sink. For years, she had only seen exhaustion and plainness staring back. Yet tonight, something shimmered, an echo of possibility. The next day, Daniel surprised her with a simple box, tied with a ribbon so delicate it made her hands tremble as she unwrapped it. Inside lay a dress, not extravagant but breathtaking in its simplicity, the soft blue fabric flowing like water between her fingers. Tears blurred her vision as she realized what this gesture meant. For the first time in years, she felt chosen. She pressed the dress against her heart, overwhelmed not by the fabric itself, but by the meaning behind it. At that moment, the thought of walking into the gala no longer felt impossible. For the first time, she wasn't just a nurse surviving day by day, she was a woman about to step into something entirely new, guided by kindness she had never dared to expect. The night of the gala arrived, and Lena stood outside the Grand Hotel ballroom, her heart pounding so loudly she swore the doorman could hear it. The dress Daniel had given her draped perfectly across her frame, modest yet elegant, and for the first time she felt the unfamiliar weight of confidence pressing softly against her shoulders. She almost turned back twice, fearing she would look out of place among the glittering gowns and sharp tuxedos. But then Daniel appeared beside her, dressed in a tailored suit that softened the grief lines etched into his face. When he saw her, he didn't look shocked or smug, he simply looked proud. "You're beautiful," he said simply, offering his arm. His words carried no embellishment, yet they sank deeper than any compliment Lena had ever received. Together, they stepped inside. The chandelier light reflected off the polished floors, music floated like silk across the room, and for once, Lena wasn't invisible. Heads turned, and she flushed, not from shame but from the startling realization that maybe she belonged. As the night unfolded, Daniel guided her with quiet steadiness, introducing her to colleagues and friends, making sure she never felt alone. When the music shifted to a slow melody, he extended his hand, his eyes asking for permission long before his words did. "May I have this dance, Lena?" Her throat tightened, but she nodded, slipping her hand into his. On the dance floor, swaying gently, she forgot about unpaid bills, long shifts, and sleepless nights. For a few fleeting minutes, she wasn't the poor nurse who couldn't afford a dress, she was simply a woman, cherished and seen, held in the arms of someone who understood her worth. As the evening drew to a close, Lena and Daniel stepped out onto the balcony, the city lights shimmering like fallen stars across the horizon. The cool night air wrapped around them, carrying the hum of laughter and music from inside. Lena leaned against the railing, her heart still racing from the dance, her mind struggling to hold on to the reality of what had just happened. "I don't understand why you're doing this for me," she admitted softly, her voice trembling. Daniel turned toward her, his expression steady, filled with a depth that words rarely reached. "Because you've already done more for me than you'll ever realize," he said. "You gave Emma hope when I thought she had none. And you gave me a reason to believe in tomorrow. Tonight. I just wanted you to feel what you've given us every single day." Tears stung her eyes, but this time they weren't born of exhaustion or loneliness, they were tears of being seen, of being valued, of realizing that sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness ripple outward until they circle back in unexpected blessings. As Daniel gently took her hand, Lena knew the gala wasn't about the dress, the chandeliers, or even the dance. It was about the quiet miracle of two broken lives daring to find healing in each other. For the first time in a long time, she believed she was more than her struggles. And in that moment, under the glow of the city lights, Lena Alvarez wasn't just a nurse, or a woman in a borrowed dress, she was someone loved, someone chosen, and someone finally ready to believe in the beauty of her own story.